welcome to Really Dicey. This is Manny, and I'm here with.
I'm Brent Knowles, and I'm a video game designer and now a tabletop RPG designer.
And today we're going to talk about the upcoming Kickstarter, Raiders of the Serpent Sea, a Norse mythology inspired adventure book for 5e D&D. We're very excited about it. Anything Arcanum Worlds is involved in some way, I'm very intrigued with. I know their last Kickstarter, Odyssey, was a success, Odyssey of the Dragonlords. So I'm very keen about this. So first question, why Norse mythology?
Well, why not? To a degree, for sure. I mean, it is always popular, and I don't know if it's ever, been done well and exclusively, in a 5e sort of campaign setting. But for me personally, I've always written short stories related to Norse mythology. I've had numerous short stories published over the years, and I've always been fascinated by the volcanic eruptions that have brought forth islands, off the coast of Iceland. I've traveled to Iceland. I've read the sagas, and I find the entire history of both, like the Norse mythology itself, the mythology pieces, but also the history of the Vikings, fascinating. Popular media right now shows like the Vikings are really popular. I think I'm not alone in really liking the idea of getting aboard a longship and sailing off into the unknown, and being prepared to handle it. And it fits very well in a adventure-centric role-playing campaign. You can have islands you don't know much about. You're sailing off to them. You can have a series of interesting adventures on them. And I think it also helps continue some of the themes from Odyssey of the Dragonlords as well. A portion of that adventure was sailing in this massive ship and exploring new islands. So that whole continue that seafaring tradition that Odyssey did, using a Norse inspired setting, I think helped build upon what was done in Odyssey.
What have you changed from classic Norse to this? Because I know this is its own world in a sense. It's just inspired.
Yeah, it definitely is just inspired. You won't bump into Thor. You'll hopefully, there's a god in the pantheon in this world that will remind you of Thor, but there's no direct one-on-one characters. But the idea of taking these somewhat flawed heroes and gods from Norse mythology, right? They weren't always the nicest of people, right? But they got things done, and taking those elements. The Raider Society, so Raiders, sort of the word we use for Viking, right? In the book, the Raiders are the Vikings. It is kind of a tough society that they live in. There are competing clans, so certainly borrowing the idea of division amongst the different groups. They weren't always just the Vikings fought each other. The Norse gods conspired against one another. There are the two major divisions of their gods, right? And I kind of borrow words where it makes sense. So the Vanir show up as a label to reflect the. They were actually the heroes from an old world that was destroyed, and then they settled this new land and kind of rebuilt society. Eventually became gods themselves. So I'm, revising some of the phrasing of things, what they mean, and kind of turning them off on their side to a degree to make it work. This will be a self-consistent world that will make a lot of sense, hopefully, to the players. It'll feel real, but it will taste like Norse mythology. If you want to play a Thor type character, you'll get to kind of like move in that direction and do those things. If you want to play like a Viking hero exploring lands, you'll get to do that sort of thing. And obviously with the cyclical idea of this old world being destroyed in a Ragnarok, and now there's a new Ragnarok threatening this new world, right? Like that was kind of a core theme, that the world would end and start again. So that's really fundamental to the world. And if the heroes play their cards correctly, I guess maybe they'll stop it finally. Or there will be some surprises that will happen when they're attempting to stop the cycle from repeating.
Interesting. So just like Odyssey of the Dragonlords had a lot of character options. They had some new races, a lot of new subclasses. Should I expect the same thing with Raiders?
That's the intent. The player's guide preview is available. So much like Odyssey did, there, there's a few class archetypes, a couple of races to explore. You can take a look at that now. And then if we hit our funding goals, we'll add more. Obviously, I want to do exactly what Odyssey did and have a class archetype for each class, right? I want to have a couple more races. We've got a couple kind of being prototyped right now. The Kickstarter is, about be able to create enough art. I want readers to open the book and kind of see the same density of art and the same high quality of art that Odyssey has. So, as we add class archetypes and races, we do need to make sure there's art to accompany all of it. So some of these will be tied to stretch goals. Encourage everybody to kind of get all their friends out funding the project, hopefully. But yeah, the goal would be if we fund high enough to have options for every class, a few new races to play around with. There's going to be a ship section, expand it from the preview, dealing with some hopefully fun ways to make the longships part of the adventure as well, and allow the heroes to customize and build different size ships and other things like that, depending on the type of campaign that game master and the players want to have. But yeah, player options are very, very good. We also have slightly changed the epic paths from Odyssey, which were very popular, and I've really enjoyed getting to use them to get the players more engaged in the Odyssey campaign I'm running. But we've changed them slightly to turn them into full-on just backgrounds. So epic backgrounds, they'll function much like the epic paths, but they do have the background details worked in. Obviously, game masters and players can choose to do whatever they want. That you could still mix and match if you wanted to do a different background with a different path. But by having them start off with the backgrounds baked in, it just makes for a tighter experience. And some of the epic paths didn't really fit any backgrounds necessarily. So this way they get a background, and they'll have a little tables that define their personality, and all of those elements. So I'm excited by that. So yeah, each of these epic backgrounds is a lot meatier than the epic paths from Odyssey. And I'm looking forward to getting more feedback on what readers think of those.
Okay. So I noticed that there's in the player's guide that you have available to download for free, two new races, the Wicker and the Tall Folk. Would you mind explaining for those that are just hearing about the first time what they are and what inspired you? Like, what's the inspirations behind these races?
Yeah, I think the Tall Folk are the easiest one to explain. I think there's this idea of playing this really large Viking. It just sounds really cool. If you watch Game of Thrones, there are some, large characters, and this allows, a player to build a character archetype around that kind of like emulates that really large, almost larger than life, right, Viking hero, right, who maybe comes out of the woods and, intimidates everybody. So that was part of it. The Tall Folk also tie into the mythology I'm building, where I'm trying to slightly interpret the Norse mythology, the idea of the giants versus the gods. There are elements of that are really critical to the world. There's hints of it in the player's guide, but there's more for the players to discover. And the Tall Folk are actually tied into that mythos, and so even the races themselves, I guess, are connected to the story. And there will be elements that come out. So it helps me tell that story. And the players, as they journey, become heroes, will get to encounter other Tall Folk too, right? Like the NPC Tall Folk, and that story details will be filled in. But yeah, the idea of just being this large size creature in a long ship and sailing and landing and leading a raid. So that's part of it. Though Wicker is a little bit different. Wanted a race that had some customization options built into it. Another element that's important to me is, the idea of these really deep ancient forests, just stretching all over, lots of unexplored territory. And then the thought of, there may be creatures that are, at home in those forests, that maybe emerged from those forests, and that are also tied to the creation myth of how this world came to be. And they just, that part of that was collaboration, I think, with the artist, just kind of, wanted to do something unique. Obviously, the Dungeons and Dragons space has a lot of options to do. Wanted to carve out something unique that I still felt, fit with Norse mythology. There are little hints of, woodland creatures, and I'm probably gonna get the name wrong, but there's a Huldra, which was the idea of this hollowed out woman who is only the front and not the back, depending on which mythology you used. And I wanted to have something distinctive that helps tell how this world was maybe different than just a straight up, Viking RPG.
If I may ask, is there the name of the world is Grimir?
Yes.
What would you say? It's hard to choose between your children, but what would you say is your favorite aspect or thing you've made for Grimir? Is there something that you adventure or setting that you're like, wow, I really hope players love this as much as I do?
Oh, that's a tough one, because there's a lot that I really like. Again, I really like Iceland. I like, these, fjords, and, I want to do more exploration of, some of these more winter-bound areas. I grew up in the north, so I'm just partial to all of that. The world itself, there are certain plot elements that take place in the world that would be my favorite, but I can't say any of them because they would be spoilers at this point. But the clans are really kind of evolving into their own personalities as I've been working on this book off and on for a couple of years. I'm just really feeling like the flavor inside of some of the clans has really kind of, it's feeling like a very real world to me. I like the twins of the Devar clan. So the idea behind that is the gods they worship are actually brother and sister, and they're twins. That has started to, that shows up in the plot in numerous different ways. There may even be, if I hit stretch goals and add an extra epic background, there might be one that is sibling related. But this is a clan that the Jarls who rule it are always twins. And that's because, they worship these twin gods. And that kind of comes from Norse mythology, because there's the idea that Thor's children alone couldn't hold his hammer. And if they were to ever wield it, both of them would have to do that. So I think that's an example where a mythology element that I thought that's kind of neat. Also kind of sucks to be the kids that they have to share the hammer, but whatever, you can imagine them figuring out how to use it together. And then I was like, well, what if there was a similar kind of god structure in my pantheon, and then it really trickled into every aspect of the society of the clan that most favors these two gods. And it also allows for, there's going to be a few different ways of how the game master establishes the world. I'll have kind of the out of the box, this is what I think this world is, what the old world was. But game masters will do whatever they want, obviously, because I can't tell them what to do. But I imagine some will. This world can actually be a continuation of the North pantheon in our world if you want, right? And then some of the characters and gods that appear, can be in your mind descendants of Thor if you want it, right? This could be the world that exists after the Ragnarok of our world, if that's what you chose. So there's lots of hooks for that throughout the campaign. And I'm kind of just excited about all the different paths you can take into this world.
So let's talk about the Kickstarter itself. Tell me, what do you have planned for so far, and how similar is it to the Odyssey of the Dragonlords Kickstarter?
Yeah, it's going to be very similar to the Odyssey of the Dragonlords Kickstarter. I think they did a lot of things right, and I'm definitely a fan of not reinventing the wheel. Especially, you know, I've never launched a Kickstarter before, so I'm really leaning on Modifius Entertainment for advice, and reaching out to the other guys, Jesse and James, who did Odyssey of the Dragonlords, just, you know, for their feedback and advice on the best way to structure it. The hardcover book is beautiful for Odyssey. I want the same thing for Raiders, so that same concept of a hardcover book, a softcover player's guide, and a game master screen and some maps. I'm still working on the details of the map pack, but probably would be very similar to what Odyssey launched with when they started Kickstarter. One of the things I'm having to work on is the Odyssey of the Dragonlords package that was delivered was the result of all the stretch goals being reached. But of course, everybody just, it's what they have right now, and it's this massive thing, and it's awesome. You know, I have to do some work to get us to the point where we're hitting some of the stretch goals, so you know, it can be quite the same amount of content that Dragonlords have. And I am trying to aim lower anyways, because the book is heavy. I've had a few people jokingly like, please don't make it quite as big as Odyssey of the Dragonlords, because it hurts my back when I'm carrying it in between sessions. But I mean, there's still going to be a lot of content. But yeah. So you get a campaign guide that's going to be for the game master to you know, better understand the world, and then to have a nice framework for a plot at least to level 10, higher if we hit stretch goals. And then the player's book with all the options. The player's book looks like it will be larger than the Odyssey player's book, just because of the addition of the ship section, and a few other things that will probably get added to it. And then still figuring out exactly a game master screen. That seems to be a popular thing. I didn't want to necessarily start with, you know, less than what Odyssey did. And I'm investigating a couple other things. We are talking about maybe having a collector's edition with full leather cover and stuff like that on it. I'm still kind of finalizing those details as we rush towards the start of Kickstarter, but I'd like to maybe be able to offer, a premium version of the campaign guide if we can make that work.
Okay. What are the dates that you hope that this Kickstarter will be released?
I really would like to go out before the end of October. It might be as early as next week, but there's just a lot of things to do. All of it is my fault, figuring out all the different things that you have to check off. But we got a cool Kickstarter video ready to show off shortly. As soon as we can go, the better. I want to start being able to talk to everybody, see what everybody, is liking and maybe not liking, and start just building that community. Odyssey has created, a real fun community around it, and I've certainly participated as a viewer, at least, in running my own campaign. Right, just listening to all the people who are already running their own campaigns and kind of the things that really worked out well for them and the tweaks that they did. I'm hoping the same kind of thing happens as Raiders. There's all these different interpretations of the campaign, and I think that's kind of cool that people can take the content and run with it in 100 different ways. Fingers crossed, end of October. I will try not to keep everybody waiting in suspense for too long, but I want to make sure we're going to have the right kind of momentum going into it. You kind of get one shot at it, and I'm not going to just assume that because Odyssey did well that we'll do well. I'm definitely going to work for it, and I really want to engage with the community as we launch and move beyond it.
Okay. So one last question.
Okay.
If I was running this game and you were one of my players, who would you be?
Who would I be? It depends how well you and I got along. If I was going to try to punish you by playing an obnoxious character, or if I would participate. I like the idea of being the raid leader, the captain of the longship. I would probably try to create a tall folk in a leadership role. The clan hasn't often risen to prominence. They're large, but they don't tend to try to take center stage. I might try to be like that first epic 12 folk hero who is trying to lead his clan to posterity and gain glory. And I do like the Wolf Rider, the class archetype for the Ranger. Just really wanted to have a better balanced pet kit. But I don't think a tall folk should be riding any wolves. So it's probably not fair to them. So it might have to have a couple different concepts. But I don't often get to play. I am always the game master. So I always listen to what the players are telling me they want and make sure that I can fulfill their ambitions there. I'm content just to play the supporting cast.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us about this amazing project. I wish you the best. But yes, to our viewers out there, thank you for watching. Please be safe out there, get your shots, and have a great day. Take care.